Last year, I moved into a new house far from the city. My new job was work from home, so I had no reason to be in a clustered and expensive city anymore. For the first couple months, I was enjoying everything about the place, especially being so far from other people. But on a regular weekday afternoon, I got a knock at my door. This was actually the first time anyone had come up to my door at this place since I moved in, so it caught me a little off guard. I went up and opened the door to a tall, middle aged man. "How can I help you?" I smiled, to be friendly, thinking he was probably a neighbor from down the street. But strangely, the first thing he did was lean to the side and look past me into my house. It was like he was trying to see who else was home. Being weirded out by his behavior, I pulled the door in and blocked the way with my body. Before I said anything, the man turned and walked away from the door. I stayed and watched him go all the way down the driveway and continue walking until he got to the street, where he got into a parked car and drove off. Without a doubt, that was the strangest encounter I'd ever had with someone up until that point, and I really had no idea how to even think about it. That night, I stayed home for dinner just to make sure the man didn't come back. I debated calling the police to put in a report, but I thought I'd sound stupid for doing that, just because some man came up to my door and did nothing. Around 9 p.m., I turned on the TV and tried to get myself more relaxed before trying to sleep. While I was on the couch, though, I heard a voice speaking outside.
Hey,
I
check
quickly
your blood
muted the
sugar.
TV and listened. It was muffled, but I could make out at least two separate people talking somewhere in the back of my yard. I ran up to the back window and opened up the blinds. In the distance, I could see two figures walking across my backyard. One of them had a long tool or object in his hand, but the other one was too hard to see clearly. They walked between the trees in my yard until they reached the side of my house. I went over to the side window and tried to see where they went, but I lost track of them, and they had stopped talking. I checked every window and still couldn't see or hear them anymore. The loud knocking at my front door made me jump and sent chills through my body. I walked up, trying not to make any noise, and looked through the peephole. There was one man, dressed in dark clothing and wearing a hat that covered his eyes. He had to be one of the men I'd just seen. But where was the other? "What do you want?" I yelled, figuring they likely already knew I was home, or maybe I'd scare them away. The man stayed on the doorstep and looked over at the side of my house, then looked back at the door. After a few seconds, the lack of response started to terrify me. I went back to the living room to get my phone and call the police, but was interrupted by a loud smashing sound, followed by another and another. I looked across the hall and saw a man hitting a shovel against the back door. He saw me and looked at me for a second, then ran away. I was so scared, I hesitated on whether to call the police or try to find somewhere to hide. The best answer was obviously to do both, but my thoughts were interrupted again when I heard the side window getting hit. I got my phone and dialed 911 while the man continued to hit the window over and over. But just as the police picked up the phone, everything went quiet, and it stayed quiet until the police came. When they pulled in, I was surprised by a sudden commotion outside. It turned out to be the man at the door, who had chosen not to leave. And after a closer look, it was the same man who'd come by earlier that day. Strangely, when the police detained him, he refused to say anything about the other man that was with him. He denied everything over and over, even though there were clear cracks and dents in the doors and windows. It was frustrating to listen to. And even weeks later, the man still refused to detail why he had come by my house twice that day, or who the other man was. Everything remains so unanswered that it still creeps me out to this day. Why was the man trying to break in so badly? And what purpose did the man at my doorstep serve to aid in the break in? I moved away in the following months, and I've since only been hoping that it wasn't me they were after, or still are. I was using Craigslist to sell an office chair that I no longer wanted. It wasn't broken or damaged and was barely even used, but I just didn't need it anymore. It took a few days, but eventually I got a message from a man who was interested in buying the chair. We had a short phone call, and he seemed like any other nice guy. He was willing to pay my asking price too, so everything seemed perfect. We set to meet at a local Walmart parking lot, which I opted for to keep it in a public setting. Come Friday afternoon, I called the man and let him know I was on my way. Then I drove down to the Walmart and got there right on time. He said he drove a gray Honda Civic, which I realized was very generic and basically useless information. He knew which car I drove too, so I was hoping he'd see me, at least, and come over. But time ticked away, and there was no sign of him. I sent a text, and a few minutes later I called, but now he wasn't picking you. I stayed in the lot for nearly an hour, waiting for him to show, but as the sun was going down, I decided to just go home. For most of the drive, I was just annoyed and upset that I'd had to waste my time for absolutely no reason. But about halfway back, I realized that a car had been behind me for a while. I got nervous about it, but once I pulled into my street, they turned away. After going inside and tossing my phone and stuff on the counter, I went back out to bring the chair inside. As I walked down my driveway, a car pulled up along the road and parked right in front of my house. I couldn't tell for sure, but it looked very similar to the car that was behind me earlier. It was a dark red sedan, looking to be at least 15 years old, with rust all around it. I quickly got my chair out of my car and went inside, closing the garage and locking all the doors. I peeked out the windows and watched as the car just sat right in front of my house, still running and everything. I checked my phone to see if the man had ever responded, and he still hadn't. That's when it all really started making me nervous. After another minute, I heard a car door open and close. I looked out the window again and saw a figure in dark clothing standing beside the car. But he was facing the house, as if he was inspecting it. Once I saw that, I closed the blinds and dialed 911, explaining to the operator that a creepy man was outside my house and that I think he followed me home. They sent an officer on their way, and I thanked them, then hung up. I pushed the blind up slightly and checked out the window one more time. His car was still there, but the man was gone. I could feel my heartbeat getting faster as I went around to each window and looked. But it wasn't until I got to my back door that I saw the man again. He was standing inside my fenced backyard and was looking up at my house. I didn't know what he was doing, but it was really creeping me out. And all I could think was that at any moment he was going to try to break in. After a second, the man started walking to the side of my house. I went back to the front window to see if he was going back to his car, but he didn't reappear. Then I went around to every window again, trying to find him, but a few minutes later, the police showed up. The car was still left outside my house, and the man was nowhere to be found. What's worse is that the car was completely empty, not having a single piece of paper or even a fingerprint anywhere inside or outside of it. It was apparently bought from a junkyard years ago, but that was the earliest record they had of it. The police were just as weirded out as I was, especially since the man just disappeared, leaving his car behind and showing no effort to break in. One thing we can say almost for certain is that it was likely the same man from Craigslist who had used an untraceable email and account and followed me from the Walmart parking lot to my house. It's been a couple months since all of this, but I still worry. Because why else would he have taken the time to inspect my house on all sides if he wasn't planning on coming back any day now to finish whatever it was he came to do?